thank you again for joining. I'm going to move to a little talk about what BECC is before we get into today's webinar. So thank you to all our 2025 sponsors. These sponsors make not only the conference possible, but this webinar and our whole series. I especially want to bring people's attention to the Arthur Vining Davis Foundation that came in as presenting sponsor this year. If you're interested in sponsoring, there's still time. Send me an email. My name is Ruben Sussman. I direct the Behavior Health and Human Dimensions program at ACEEE. I also direct Bear Hub, and the reason I'm here is because I co-chair BECC. But in a moment, I will be turning things over to our co-chair and today's speaker. Before I do that, just want to note that the conference is finally coming around. It's very soon, November 2nd to 5th this year. And we haven't had the conference in 2 years, so I do hope you can join us in Sacramento. And please register before October 1st so you can save yourself $50. The registration price goes up on October 1st, so don't miss out. I just want to highlight a couple of things about the conference. There's tons of great content that you can see online right now. But I wanted to note we just added some incredible pre- and post-conference workshops. On Sunday, we have Sparking Behavior Change with Community-Based Social Marketing. Jennifer Tabacchino, Tabanico, pardon me, is going to be speaking. Her and Doug Mackenzie Moore wrote the book on community-based social marketing, and you will get a free copy of the book if you're one of the first 30 to register. We also have on Wednesday, community-led decarbonization, behavioral opportunities and barriers. That's after the conference, and that's free. And we have a wonderful workshop led by Quinn, Designing with, Not for, leveraging human-centered design and power awareness for meaningful community engagement. And that one's also free. So when you come to the conference, also check out the pre and post-conference workshops. And we have some incredible keynotes and spotlights I wanted to mention here. Of course, you may already be aware, rather, that Dr. Lisa Patel, Executive Director of the Medical Society Consortium on Climate and Health, will be our keynote. She's actually a doctor, and she talks about the importance of using health as a communication tool for communicating climate change. And we have some great spotlights in our plenary room as well, supporting the clean energy transition through workforce and decarbonization. Conservative solutions to climate change. Yes, there are conservatives out there working on climate solutions. We'll hear from them. We have a fantastic speaker from the EU, Javier Sancho Velasquez, the head of Global Issue and Innovation, will be doing a fireside chat. And we have a fantastic spotlights on resilient cities and resourceful solutions. And of course, most people come to BECC not just because it's great content, but because of great networking, and it's just a fun place to be. We have chances to meet speakers. We have interactive sessions. We have poster session that's really a reception and a poster session rolled up. We have a music night. We have great social events, morning runs, networking dinners, lots of chances to meet others that are similar to you, like-minded folks. And it's really a great opportunity to feel rejuvenated, because a lot of times we can feel down in this kind of work. This is a great chance to meet people like yourselves, also working, also trying to make network connections. And the last thing I want to mention before we get to today's webinar is that next month we have our final webinar in the series, AI for Climate Action. Moran Surf and others that will yet to be announced are going to be on that webinar, moderated and hosted by our very own Miriam Assel. That's it for what's coming up. For today, use the chat for questions and discussions throughout the webinar. Discuss with each other, discuss what you're hearing. You can talk about questions you have. But if you really have a question you want answered, go to the Q&A. There's a button there, and you can even upvote the questions you like. We'll have time for the questions at the very end of the session, and I'll introduce Beth Carlin in a moment. She'll be moderating the Q&A. And before you ask, the recording will be available on the BECC website at the end of the session. So don't worry about furiously jotting down all the notes. The recording will be made available, as will the slides for our keynote speaker today. And that's it. Today we're going to move to how to tell a climate story people care about. And I'm going to turn it over now to Beth Carlin to introduce Jacob Simon, our speaker for today.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to see so many familiar names and comments in the chat. So thank you, everyone who's joining. I'm really excited that Jacob's speaking with us today, and kind of on the topic of conferences and networking. I met Jacob at a Jewish leadership retreat, and didn't even realize that we both worked in the space of climate change because we just were connecting on like the good food and the beautiful views and sunsets and mortality salience. And then it was literally after I got home and did that thing where you start adding people to LinkedIn because you're a professional, that I was like, wait a second, this person is incredible. And just literally wrote him on WhatsApp, and I was like, we have to talk about work. And I think that's the power of connecting in person. So I will just make that one last plug for BECC because we do want to see you there. But I really like am honored and excited that I met Jacob as a person, and then became enamored with his work in the month since that happened. And Jacob is a climate educator and creator, former internationally ranked Team USA pairs figure skater, and the creator of Jacob Simon Says, which is a platform telling real stories of progress to replace dread and fear with hope and action. He has audiences of well over 500,000. That might even be higher now. Have you hit 1 million yet? Yeah, there we go. Over 1 million, not updated website. I'm bragging for him. Over 1 million people across social media. I'm going to throw links into his TikTok and Instagram, or where he posts most of his content. And then a newly branded newsletter, which he might talk a little bit about, called The Hope Makers, to overcome eco anxiety and get involved with tackling the climate crisis through optimism, community, and action. With so much, Jacob, I always think about one of my favorite authors, Tom Robbins, who talks about joy in spite of everything. Not blind joy, not mindless, not ignoring the problems of the world, but looking them in the face and not allowing them to rain on my parade, in the words of Tom Robbins. And that's what Jacob's content is. It is, I know all those things, and here is what we can celebrate. Here's what we can put our hearts and minds into. He lives in Brooklyn. He is also accelerating a better future through storytelling and collaborating with the UN, NRDC, EPA, DOT, Clean Creatives, and more. Part of my goal is for him to meet and be exposed to folks in the BECC audience, to find more collaborators to help Jacob, and help Jacob help you with your work. So with that, I'm going to shut up and turn it over to my friend and inspiration, Jacob Simon, to talk to us about climate storytelling for hope.
That was so lovely, Beth. Thank you. I also have to shout out your pothos vines behind you. That's such a vibe. Incredible. It's so great to be here with you all today. Let me share my screen and then we can get things started. This will work very smoothly, I'm sure of it.
This is the hardest part. It's all downhill from here.
Exactly. Okay, here we go. So yes, as Beth gave you the long version, I'll give you the short version. Just to reiterate, I'm a video creator reporting what's going right in the world, usually the natural world, and I like to say that I share stories of progress to replace dread and fear with hope and action. And the goal is to remind us all that things, some things are still going right, and there's still some amazing people that are out there working on solutions, implementing them, and we should not only support them, but we can also get motivated to enact our own solutions and solve our own community problems. And today I'm going to talk to you about how to tell a climate story that people actually care about. I've been creating climate content for 3 years now or so, and specifically video content. And I've learned a lot of tips and tricks along the way that I think are applicable to many other people. And I want as many people as possible to be making digital climate content. I think it's super important, and it can feel intimidating and overwhelming. And hopefully today I can provide a little bit of a lens in that we all have a voice that we should use, and creating content online is a great way to do it. So just a quick overview of what we'll be talking about today. I'll start with my story, how I got involved in this, hopefully build a little bit of credibility, and then talk about my content journey specifically. So I'll have some of my early video presentations to kind of embarrass myself a little bit, but we can learn along the way, and different things that I started adding into the mix and why I did those, which leads into best practices in climate storytelling in general, and also content creation on these digital platforms. Then go into some applications for you and your content, and then we can end with questions. So If you have any along the way, jot those down, and I'm excited to answer them. So we'll start with my start, which was in figure skating. I started skating when I was 7 years old because both of my older siblings did, and my mom had nowhere else to bring me but the rink. So I was a little menace running around with the other younger brothers, and I never really wanted to skate, but eventually I got jealous of especially my brother for all the attention he was getting. So I went into pairs figure skating, which is the doubles discipline where it's me and a partner and we're doing the lifts and throws and jumps and spins and all that fun stuff. And I continued doing that. But the plan was to do it through school. And then I actually made Team USA my junior year of high school. And I moved to Colorado Springs to train at the Olympic Training Center and had the incredible fortune to travel around the world representing my country in Grand Prix and World Championships. And it was such a fun chapter. And I learned so much about storytelling. I think figure skating is such a story-centric sport. And I think a lot of that discipline and just ability to connect with an audience really started in my skating days. And unfortunately, it did all come crashing to an end with a shoulder dislocation in practice. And I was no longer able to lift a human being over my head at the time. I'm fully recovered now, but it took too long and it was career ending. So I retired at 21 and I looked for what else to do with my life. And while I was living in Colorado, whatever free time I had, I would spend in nature. I would go on hikes and stare at the stars and kind of contemplate my place in the world and really fell in love with the natural world, with the environment. And I had studied communication and media in school while I was skating full time. And I started toying around with how I can use the skills that I had developed to basically try and fight the climate crisis. And I started traveling. I had the incredible fortune to do some very unique experiences, like live on a goat farm in the desert for a couple of weeks and experience different ways of living. That was really motivating to me. I'm like, we can perhaps change the way that people are acting and living by experiencing these things. Or maybe for the people that aren't able to experience them firsthand, I wonder if there's a way that I can reach out to them and provide what I'm able to experience or have been able to experience and learn from that, and hopefully inspire them to do something to get involved in climate. And I started taking some environmental courses as an adult. And in one of these courses, I started a newsletter that I had originally called Climativity, which it was a combination of climate and positivity, where I pulled in all the positive headlines I could find and sent them to my classmates and just trying to motivate us all to keep up the good work we're doing. And I also figured that all of us, we're dedicated, we're taking this course in our free time. We care about implementing climate solutions, but somebody that isn't already involved, why are they going to care or take action if all we're consuming is it's too late, this thing's going bad, that thing's going bad, we should have taken action many decades ago. Like, yes, of course, all of that is true, but things can continue on the same path. They can get a lot worse or they can get a lot better. And I figured that by providing this breath of fresh air, maybe I can help motivate more people to help it get better. So it started in the written format. People resonated with that. It started expanding. And with the explosion of short form video, I figured I'm already doing the research. I'm basically writing a script. Why don't I just make some videos and see if I could reach a new audience? And over time, that started performing very well. I was able to reach exponentially more people than I was through the newsletter. And I started to realize maybe this could actually be something. So I kept my kind of hypothesis from the start, which was find the people that are implementing solutions and doing this right and tell their story in the most compelling and engaging way that I can and get more people to care about it. And through many years and many thousands of videos and tens of thousands, who knows how many hours of video creation and editing, I reached a lot of success. And just a quick slide reiterating some of the results that I've been able to have. And I think I mostly included this to offer a bit of hope in the sense of, I was just a regular guy whose background was figure skating, and I believed in his mission and I worked really hard and I had a lot of success. I mean, over 1 million followers talking about good climate news is not something that a lot of people would believe if I just told them. And it's not like I have a fancy editing team or incredible equipment. I'm just telling the stories that I'm passionate about. And I've gotten people to be passionate about them as well, and to care about them. And I'm also very proud about this green highlight on the bottom, which is my engagement rate of 24.7%. It fluctuates, but that's when it was when I screen grabbed this last week. Is higher than 99% of creators with similar reach. So beyond a following count and a view count, I think the engagement is a great sign that's indicative of people really resonating with this content and asking follow-up questions and having a conversation in the comments. And the engagement rate is basically the ratio of people viewing a piece of content to engaging with it, which means likes, comments, shares, bookmarks, things like that. So almost a quarter of people that are seeing my content, I believe this was a screen grab from TikTok, are engaging with it. And I think that's really promising and important as well. And I also included a few screen grabs of examples of comments and submissions that people explained they did because of seeing my content. And yeah, I think it's going a little bit beyond numbers on a screen. I'm able to track some metrics as well, like link clicks if I'm pointing to a specific campaign, but I don't know what they do when they go on that link. So sometimes the anecdotal kind of evidence of people taking action is beneficial because if someone's taking the time to write a comment about a thing they did, I'm pretty sure that they're telling the truth, and other people can get inspired as well. And before we go into some content examples, I just want to reiterate a couple of goals that I had on my content from the start. And I'm not telling you necessarily how to make your content, but I think it'd be beneficial for you as well. And the first is combating the negativity bias. So a couple of studies to back this up. The first one is called Negative Online News Articles Are Shared More to Social Media. Kind of self-indicative of what it talks about, but a quote pull from that: social media users are 1.91 times more likely to share links to negative news articles. So it means we're seeing nearly 2 times as much negativity as positive comment or content. And it makes sense to a certain degree. If something big and bad is happening, you want to share that to your community and neighbors and followers so that they're aware, especially if it's relevant to you. But it's not an accurate representation of society if we're consuming so much more negativity than positivity. And also in this bottom study, negativity drives online news consumption. Negative words in news headlines increase consumption rates, and positive words decrease consumption rates. For a headline of average length, each additional negative word increased the click-through rate by 2.3%. So it's literally good business for news publications to be negative, because the more clicks they get, the more advertising dollars they can have. And algorithmically, it's also beneficial to be negative, because if someone gets mad and starts an argument in your comments, the algorithm notices that there's an increase in comments and will feed it to more people. And I don't think that's a benefit to society to operate in that way. And I think when it comes to climate, of course, there's a lot of bad news, but if we want people to remember what we're saying and act on it, I think we need to break through that a little bit. And also, these screenshots here are linked out to the original articles, so when this is provided to you later, you can click in and learn more. The second is the communications problem. So another study called Social Tipping Dynamics for Stabilizing Earth's Climate by 2050. Just a quick block: achieving a rapid global decarbonization to stabilize the climate critically depends on activating contagious and fast-spreading processes of social and technological change within the next few years. Basically, that just means we need contagious technological change, which is the solutions, the renewable energy and things like that, that a lot of really smart people are working really hard on implementing. And we also need contagious social change. And I think that's where the importance of digital communication comes in. It's kind of the neighborhood effect, where if you see your neighbor installing solar panels on their roof, you're more likely to install solar on your roof as well. And it's kind of creating this digital neighborhood where we're sharing these ideas and celebrating wins and highlighting people that are walking the walk so we can follow their lead. And if we have great solutions but no one knows about them, it's not going to do us any good. I also want to combat doom scrolling, which, if you aren't familiar with, is spending excessive time online scrolling through news or other content that makes one feel sad, anxious, angry, etc. We've probably all done this at one time or another, maybe last night. A couple examples of how bad the situation is: teens spend an average of 4.8 hours on social media per day as of 2023. Users aged 16 to 64 worldwide spend 6 hours and 40 minutes per day on screens across various devices, and daily time spent on social networking by internet users worldwide in 2012 was 90 minutes. 2024 is 143 minutes. So we're spending a lot more time online. We're consuming a lot of negativity online. It's shaping our worldview. It's inducing a lot of climate anxiety, which is detrimental and counterintuitive to the mission that we're trying to do. And I think, of course, in the content that I'm providing, which is very positive oriented, it can help break through the doom scrolling. But even if you're talking about something that isn't great, it's important to provide some kind of action that people can do, provide some kind of community and education and different techniques to break through the overwhelming doom scroll. And finally, my last goal was just to make climate interesting. I don't think people remember stats and facts that well. They remember stories. And I'm going to talk about storytelling a lot in the next 20 minutes or so. And I think that climate is boring and technical, especially when we're competing with everything else on social media. We got prank videos, we got cooking, food, travel, lifestyle, dancing, all this really stimulating and interesting content. And then I'm trying to talk about a climate topic. So it's an uphill battle to break through. And I think the only way to do that is to make climate interesting. And the best success that I've had is by turning it into a story and making it a compelling and emotional story. So just a couple of examples of early content, and none of these videos are perfect by any means. Even my videos today are not perfect, but I think there's some learnings from each of these. I'll quickly go over them and get you to understand kind of my mindset from the start. And I'll show you several videos that are more recent as well in a minute, and we can kind of pick it apart. So hopefully this sound works fine.
Want some climate hope? Earlier this month, India banned many single-use plastic items, which will drastically reduce the 14 million tons of plastic waste that they create every year. Despite backlash from food, beverage, and consumer goods companies, the ban went through and includes straws, cutlery, earbuds, packaging films, plastic sticks for balloons, candy, ice cream, cigarette packets, and more.
So that was one of my first climate videos I ever made. I think I had a few good things going for me. I had some nice lighting and a microphone, and I was explaining what I'm doing with the good climate news and providing climate hope. I think that it was, of course, not very storytelling oriented. It was very like, I'm talking to you about a fact that some people could find interesting. But I think I had the right idea with what I was trying to provide from the beginning, and it could just expand from there. In this next one, I was trying to kind of attract other people's interests and hop on a trend, which is a very common thing to do, especially on TikTok.
Whew, that looks so good, and I have great news. LA and San Diego just voted to ban those foam takeout containers. They're probably carcinogenic, they create a ton of waste, they're made from fossil fuels, and they just kinda suck. So pretty soon we'll be able to get the same great food in much better packaging.
I think these are probably harder for me to watch than all of you, but yeah, in this one, I was like, oh, I can hook people in with this food story and then connect it to something that maybe wouldn't stop someone in their tracks as much, which is the ban on styrofoam packaging. And throughout all of these in my content today, I'm trying to keep things casual. A lot of the time I'm talking into my headset, my just default Apple microphone. The sound's not great, but it's good enough. I've upgraded since then, but I think from the start, I've been trying to appear as I am, which is just a regular guy who finds information and shares it with people. And I do think that was beneficial, and maybe another good thing to come from this early piece. And this final one from early content was when I started my current kind of trend of walking around outside. And it wasn't like deliberately to help the content. It was really for my own mental health. And I figured if I'm going to be making a lot of video content, I don't want to be sitting at my desk staring at a ring light. I want to be outside. And it's shaky and the audio is not great, but here we go.
So the only time I was ever on a motorcycle, I was so small that my legs couldn't reach the pedals. If I hopped on one today, I wouldn't really know how to turn it on or accelerate. And when I was 9, I flipped over my plain old bicycle and landed on my head. And while I do ride my bicycle all the time, I don't really know how fun motorcycles are. That being said, I do love to scooter and e-bike and ride around in any form of electric transportation. It's fast, it's fun, and it doesn't spew out pollution or make an insanely loud noise. And in today's good environmental news, electric motorcycles might be the best new thing after Zero Motorcycles raised $107 million. Their total capital raise is now over $500 million, and they've sold 20,000 vehicles. An electric one feels less intimidating to me, and I think I'd be more likely to give it a go. Would you use one?
So again, I think I had a couple of good things going for me. I start dipping my toe into that like storytelling type of content overview, and not sure why I was wearing sunglasses so you can't see my face and shaking the phone a lot. But I think each of these have a little bit of good that we'll go into now, which is some best practices. So over the course of those videos and many, many more, I pulled away that good content either teaches me, entertains me, understands me, and great content does all three. So when it comes to climate content, of course, we're going to be teaching people the vast majority of the time. Pretty much all my content's educational. We're talking about some kind of climate topic. But the only way to get people to care beyond like maybe a few people that really care about that climate topic is to also entertain and understand them. So the entertaining aspect is to jump on trends, use interesting locations and styles of communication, and having B-roll overlays. And I think I started to do this a little bit in those videos, and hopefully I continue to do a better job in the examples I'll show you next. And then the understanding, and I think I did that a little bit with this first one where I say want some climate hope, which is trying to reach through to how people are feeling. With climate, a lot of the time, and especially in climate anxiety, it can feel like we're alone in our feelings. And the reality is we're not. We're part of a big community of people who care. And reaching through to them and getting them to realize that, you know, we can all take positive climate action together, I think is super important. So if we can do all three in every piece of content we make, that's the sweet spot. Some best practices for video creation specifically, and I don't love to throw a bunch of text onto a slide, but I think this is the best way of just grasping a bunch of learnings into one view, is making the intro count, which is commonly referred to as the hook. And this is the first few seconds of what you say in your piece of content. You're on your device, you're scrolling until someone catches and keeps your attention. And you have a very, very little amount of time to do that. So you want to provide something that's going to stop someone in their tracks, but stay away from like the clickbaity kind of nonsense where you're saying something ridiculous and not following through to it. I'm just trying to set the stage quickly and maybe pull somebody out of this like doom scrolling loop and get them to pay attention and stick around to the end. So a lot of my content, I start by saying, if you need to cleanse your feed, here's what's going right today. I think that's kind of an interesting hook, especially because it stands out amongst the majority of social media content today, but it's providing an example of what I'm going to be talking about, and then I follow through on that, and that way people can stick around, which goes into being consistent. I have a consistent style, and the way that I communicate and speak is consistent, and I'm showing up day after day. And this is one of the most important things in growing an audience and getting people to come back. And I think that they come to recognize my face now, and we have a conversation. And I think that's super important in building a platform. If you're posting widely different forms of content, after a while, I think at the beginning, it's important to figure out what works best for you. But then once you have that, show up and keep iterating a little bit and experiment and improve, but show up as much as you can. You should also engage with your audience. It always surprises me when creators talk about posting and not reading their comments. And of course, I understand in certain situations, but I actually find the comment section is a great place to continue educating people and have a conversation. And we go back and forth all the time. And even people that disagree with me, it's a great way to provide them with my sources and explain why I included certain stories and things like that. You have to be authentic. I watch my videos so many times in the editing process. I think I would definitely get sick of watching my face and hearing my voice if it wasn't authentic to my mission and my message. So don't stretch what you're doing just to hop on a trend. Do what you actually want to do and are proud of, because then you'll be able to keep doing it long term. You want to find the nexus point between different interests. So I did that maybe a little bit with that food video, but climate is so intersectional with everything else in the world. So connect it to something else happening, and it will get more people's attention and it will get more people to care. You also want to provide a takeaway, ideally a single takeaway. Someone watches your content and they're going to watch many, many other pieces of content as well. So if they want to remember what you're saying, you need to provide some kind of like single takeaway. And in a lot of my videos, it's basically like there's still hope in the world. And here are some examples of that. Sometimes in single stories, it's a specific campaign or organization or solution that I want people to remember. But if you're including a lot of information and maybe not reiterating it at the end, people are probably not going to take that away. You also a little bit contradictory with the be consistent, but you want to experiment and learn. You want to try different things, see if your audience resonates with it. A lot of the time I make a video that I think is going to be great and people don't care about it that much. And my best performing video this year so far was one that I completed and I was like, people are not really going to care about this, but I think it's cool. And it was actually about the first North American burial in a casket made of living fungi and mycelium, which I was like, surely this is very niche and not that many people will be interested in it. And lo and behold, they were. And I wouldn't have gotten that data point or been able to tell them this information if I didn't just post it. So I always say post it is better than perfect. And finally, I'm going to reiterate this many times, but you want to tell a story. Humans are social animals. We love hearing stories. And if I just spew stats and facts at you, you're probably not going to remember them as well as you will if I told you a story. In a more technical sense, you can get free images and videos on sites like Pexels and Unsplash, which is great if I'm talking about solar panels and I don't have my own photos of a solar panel. I can get some from these sites or like the Amazon rainforest or really a lot of things that just have a visual aid to add context. Also on social media platforms, they don't love it when you link out and they make it really hard to hyperlink. It's impossible on most. So I always want to include my sources. I think it's important for transparency and to get people to continue learning. So what I do is screenshot the article title and publication, like you can see here. So people can look that up. And I also do provide the links in my newsletter where I can actually hyperlink them out. But I think it's important to provide sources, and I provide those in the comments if people ask as well. And then also you want to do subtitles or captions on screen for accessibility and for search engine optimization. If I'm talking about solar-powered robot rabbits like I am here, and someone is searching for that or something similar, it's a lot more likely to pop up if I have that in the captions. And I talk fast in a lot of my videos. If English isn't someone's first language, they may not understand me, so the captions help. Or if someone's listening on silent or can't hear, then they can still learn what I'm telling them through the captions. Yeah. So taking all that into consideration, this video is still from several years ago, but it's kind of evolved into more similar of my current content style. So let's take a look at this.
For the first and only time, it's April 12, 2023. Here's all of today's good news in one take. Remember to comment so you stay on the good side of the internet. Chipotle unveiled a fully electric restaurant design that is completely powered by renewable energy, with 3 locations opening in Virginia, Colorado, and Florida, and 100 by next year. And over 500 advertising agencies now have taken the Clean Creators Pledge to not work with fossil fuel clients and instead take their sustainability commitments seriously. And more than 100 climate protests across the U.S. at the end of March were led by a surprising group of people, those over the age of 60, in a group called Third Act for Experienced Americans, standing up for what's right along with our youth. And the most ambitious federal climate regulation to date likely is coming from the EPA that would make strict vehicle emissions requirements and force automakers to boost their EV sales up to 67% of new cars sold by 2032. Last but not least, it is a beautiful day to be outside here in New York City. Share this with someone who needs some good news, and I'll see you tomorrow.
So very far from perfect still. The captions aren't synced up to my audio. It's shaky. I do think that I started implementing a lot of things that I just discussed. I have a takeaway, I have a hook, I have an emotional appeal with that music and the content and the story that I'm trying to tell people. And I think that it's important to note that, you know, this is kind of when my content started doing well, and looking back on it, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of things that I would have improved, but I wouldn't have learned any of that if I, again, just didn't get started. And throughout making content, once again, I started focusing a lot more on storytelling, which at its core is just having a beginning, middle, and end. And I found a lot of success focusing on a person or a group of people. I think humans like other humans, and we're a lot more likely to stick around and listen and remember if we're focused on a person's story. And I think that's what's sticky. And what I mean by that is it's going to stay in someone's mind after they scroll through other content and after they carry on with their day. And ultimately, that's the goal. We want them to remember something and look up more of it and take some kind of action. You also want to reveal the surprise at the end. Otherwise, it's a report. It's not really a story if there's not some kind of conflict and reveal. And I do a lot of reporting as well. It's just not quite as compelling and advantageous. So set the stage, tell the story, focus on a person, slowly tell that story, reveal it towards the end, and ultimately make someone care. And I think that's the best advantage of a story. It connects to the viewer on a deeper level. And I'm about to show you this piece of content right here on the right where, if I just said like dolphins are getting protected in Korea, that'd be great. Like maybe some people would resonate with it. But instead, I'm focusing on a specific person and having some interesting angle where I explain that he's trying to get legal personhood status for these dolphins. And that's a lot more compelling. And I kind of wait till the end to explain it fully. And let's just watch instead of me rambling.
Here's why the future will be better. This director, known as Dolphin Man, is sailing around cutting fishing lines off dolphins and getting them to be legally considered people. Jung Joon Lee is a Korean filmmaker with several documentaries about Indo-Pacific bottlenose dolphins, where about 120 live near Jeju Island, South Korea's largest island, formed 2 million years ago by an underwater volcanic eruption. Still filled with lava tube caves, the UNESCO World Natural Heritage Site is also home to a pod of these bottlenose dolphins that are threatened by human boats, fishing gear, and pollution. So groups and activists like Dolphin Man got a marine protected area set up, but are aiming to really protect the dolphins by recognizing them as legal persons with rights and protections to survival, able to take those who threaten the creatures to court. And to convince people they really deserve it, they've made a book with each dolphin's name next to their dorsal fin, hoping that for the first time, South Korea designates an animal as a legal person, following the footsteps of many others, giving status to everything from a mountain in New Zealand to whales in the Pacific Ocean and a river in Canada. So do these dolphins deserve to be people? I'll report what's going right in the world. See you tomorrow for more.
So hopefully you're starting to see how I'm implementing more storytelling in the content and also how it's continuing to improve and level out in sound and stability and having a lot more overlays that are relevant and visual. Of course, it's still not perfect. It never is. I don't have like a big content team. It's just me editing, and I don't love editing. I'm doing it as basically as I can, but it's really about the content and story that I'm telling that people are resonating with. And here's a couple other examples. This one's another story. Maybe we can watch and have some takeaways from. And this one is another content style that I do often, which is kind of a roundup of a bunch of miniature stories.
Here's why the future will be better. This 62-year-old woman taught herself the science to bring down a monstrous polluting plastics factory and actually pulled it off. Lorene Allen moved to a small New Hampshire town called Merrimack to raise her family, but soon after, the drinking water had high levels of harmful forever chemicals called PFAS. Local authorities downplayed the situation with outdated information, but after just a bit of research, Lorene knew they weren't telling the full truth. So to protect her community, she started researching further in studies and reports, testifying at council meetings for safer drinking water, and organizing door-to-door surveys, finding above-average health complications linked to PFAS exposure. Authorities called her crazy for fear-mongering, and neighbors didn't understand, so she got the help of scientists to test the air, water, and soil to gather more proof. While the Saint-Gobain plant didn't care and ramped up production further, Lorene was never going to give up. She organized protests, reached out to journalists, and convinced the EPA to hold a listening session. And after 8 years of non-stop pressure, Lorene won the fight. The plant shut down. Her home was made safer for future generations, and she continues to clean up contaminations, winning the 2025 Goldman Environmental Prize for her relentless dedication. Our report was going right in the world. See you tomorrow for more.
So in my opinion, something like this is helpful that I'm focusing on the story of Lorene and I'm able to educate people through that. If I just explain that, Mary Mack had a polluting plastics facility that's no longer there, people probably aren't going to remember it, but hopefully people remember Lorene Allen. And because of this story that I'm telling, they also learn a little bit about the harmful things that come from these facilities like PFAS.
If you need to cleanse your feed, here's another minute of just good news. An unexpected baby bison was born, marking the first calf in the White Earth Nation's program to restore bison populations to indigenous lands in Minnesota, which is both historic and surprising as they weren't expecting any births until next year. And a flowering tree was extinct in the wild and kept alive only in a Sri Lankan botanical garden until a Facebook post claimed there was a 50-foot Pini Borrelia in a small village, so a botanist checked it out, confirmed it was real, overturned its status, and teams planted saplings near the wild populations to help it recover. And new data shows that Africa is having a surge in solar panel imports, with 20 countries setting new records over the past 12 months, marking a 60% increase and hinting at a pivotal moment where solar energy takes off across the continent, which again comes at a great time as we're about 2 weeks away from the Sunday of Action, where public events will take place around the world to celebrate our sun. And today's community win comes from Saxon 8, who started a library at their workplace so everyone can bring in, read, and swap books. A report what's going right in the world, so share your story with us and see you tomorrow for more.
So a couple of reasons that I included this one. First of all, at one point in there, I talked about the Sunday of Action and then had an on-screen call to action of click the link in my bio to sign up for an event. And that's a useful way for getting people to take action on social media, where you can't really link things out in the comments, but you can have a link in your bio. And also I started recognizing and celebrating my community and what they comment. And I think that's super important in growing that audience as well. And then just ending with some general advice, a bit of a reminder on the importance of telling compelling and emotional stories that are optimized for digital platforms. I didn't dive into the differences between the many different digital platforms, and certain types of content and styles do better on others. And maybe if people have questions on those, happy to give you my thoughts. But I think the important thing is the words you're saying and the education wrapped up in that story that gets somebody to care. It's also helpful to partner with established and trusted communicators to get your message out, like me and many other inspiring and amazing people who are creating this type of content. I think it's helpful for organizations both to see how your work and message can be told in someone else's style and format and voice. And also, it helps build trust right from the start. If somebody who has an audience that repeatedly comes to them to hear their information and trusts and believes in what they're saying, to be able to partner with you is, how we make a living. And it's also advantageous to see how an audience reacts and learn from that and be able to get in that comment section and see if they resonate with one type of messaging or another. And also, talk to us. We can help with consulting and things like that and give advice. It's my mission to get as many people creating climate content as possible. I think we need all hands on deck, so I'm more than happy to help out. And then finally, be consistent and develop your own community as well. Continue showing up, continue making your voice heard. I included a couple of comments that are very heartwarming. Just to quickly read them. Honestly, I'd probably give up if I wasn't shown that positive change is happening every day. This keeps me hopeful. Watching your content, I'll never stop fighting for a better world. I think that was super, super positive to see. And this other one was very sweet. Every time you pop up on my phone, my 5-year-old says, "Is that my favorite guy?" "Yes, ma'am, it is." So just including these to show that, my audience cares about what I have to say, and I'm just a regular guy walking around, and I don't think that there's necessarily anything special about me that you all don't have. So I think all of you should feel empowered to be able to create your own content, to develop a team that can be creating content, and there shouldn't be, a barrier to entry. As long as you have a phone, you can get started. I didn't have any fancy equipment to start, and I really still don't. And you can also partner with some awesome people to help get a jump start. And I feel like we're at time here. So just to reiterate, I'm Jacob Simon Says on all major platforms. I like to say that I tell good stories for a breath of fresh air, again, to replace dread and fear with hope and action, usually related to the natural world. I think we can answer some questions here. And also, if you have follow-ups, you can reach out to my email there, jacob@jacobsimonsays.com. But thank you all for being here and listening to me, and hopefully you learned a thing or two.
Jacob, that was so awesome. Yeah, anybody else? Let's do a virtual, I know those cute little claps. Virtual round of applause for Jacob. There we go. We have so many questions. So if one form of engagement, I always think as a speaker, I'm doing well if there's either absolutely no questions or a ton, and we have a ton. So we're not
Love
going to
it.
get to them all. We're going to do as much as we can.
Great.
So thank you, everyone. Several questions actually came in on the Q&A and the chat about how do you source news stories? Where do you find, how do you source and select what you cover? Like you told the story of, and you mentioned this to me once, that you had no idea that the burial story was going to be so big, and it was like one of your biggest performers in the past few months. So tell us a little bit about that process.
Yeah, I don't have like an editorial team that I'm vetting things with. It's really my opinion, what I'm personally interested in, what I think is worth telling. A lot of the time, I try and head towards stories that are underreported. And also, of course, what I think my audience is going to like. But the process of finding these stories, unfortunately, I don't have a great tip or trick. I'm spending a couple hours most mornings combing through maybe 30 different publications that I know cover the types of news that I like to see. It's big platforms like Associated Press and The Guardian, and it's more niche ones that some are focused just on good news, like The Good and Positive.news and places like that. In addition, I subscribe to a bunch of newsletters that send news roundups, and other journalists and creators and climate organizations. And also, because I have an established audience now, people are sending me a lot of stories, whether they're DMing them or sending them over email, and that's helpful as well. And some organizational partners share stories with me all the time too. So I don't have a great way of like skipping all that research. Thankfully, I love to do it. That's my favorite part of this, that I get to learn constantly and kind of talk about what I want to talk about. And it is true that a lot of the time I'm combing through plenty of bad stories to get to the good stuff. And I kind of bookmark those and then go back, read them, look for other sources talking about the same thing, write my script, film it, edit it, post it, do it all again.
Awesome. Next question. A couple different people asked about choice of medium and channels. So one person, Ryan, asked, how do you think about the difference between video, photo, and written content? And do you think about what stories are best for each medium? And then another person, I'm not finding in the chat, asked about, Adam asked about, are you interested in posting on Facebook or YouTube? So channels, formats in terms of written versus video versus audio, as well as what channels you're posting on. How do you think about those?
Yes. So in current times with content creation, it's kind of better to be in as many places as possible because different algorithms feed people different content. So I think I'm on like 8 platforms now. I started on TikTok specifically because the reach potential was way bigger than any other platform when you're starting out. You can just hit that sweet spot in the algorithm and get seen by a lot of people, and that wasn't historically the case on other platforms. It's changed a little bit. Like you can get that a little more on other platforms and a little less on TikTok. And it's constantly changing and you can never predict what's next. I think that so many more people are consuming video now that it's hard to not be on that platform if you're trying to maximize your reach. The kind of downside is that it's a very visual format. So if you don't have pictures and videos or some kind of like interesting image to overlay or B-roll, then it's a little bit harder to be engaging. And also, like I said, you can't really link out. If you're writing a blog post, you can do whatever you want to. There are no limitations. And photo content does well for some people. I have never really done that myself. I just don't have the time and capacity to, and I resonated towards video because it's what I was consuming. I think that's probably what I would recommend anybody to do first. Whatever you enjoy consuming, it's probably your best bet to start there creating, because whether consciously or unconsciously, you've learned what resonates and what doesn't with you, whether you're consuming the content or not. So you can start there and you can continue like picking up learnings when you're being more conscious about it from other content that you see. I have started posting on Facebook and YouTube as well. I think there's potential on all of them. Yeah, it's just kind of where you want to be, where you're hanging out. And in an ideal world, you post everywhere. So people that are just on certain platforms can still see your content, but it's probably best to start on one and build up from there. I started on TikTok back in the day, but again, yeah, start with where you're hanging out and then continue to expand if you can.
I love that. Start where you're hanging out. And then kind of similar vein from channels to audiences. So I'm trying to group, we have so many questions. I'm trying to kind of group them together. So we had one question. Heidi was asking, is your content targeting, do you target a specific audience segment or taking a more broad spectrum approach to a diverse audience? And then I'm going to tap in a couple additional questions. Maisha asked specifically about thoughts on keeping low income audiences engaged. And then I think it was Miriam about thoughts on engaging folks who aren't as receptive to messages about climate, positive or negative. And then there was somebody who was asking about targeting youth. So kind of what are your thoughts on audience and how do you think about targeting abroad versus do you ever think about for specific posts or content, I'm really trying to get this group? Either on your own channels, or I know you also do work with kind of partners and sponsors. Like if somebody comes to you and says, I want to target this group, like how do you think about audience?
Definitely. Yeah. So there's some specific ways you can target audiences. Of course, with the content you're telling, if I'm talking about a New York story, it's more likely that New York people will stop and listen to it. I also live in New York, so the stories that I tell skew towards the New York and towards the US just because I live here. So that's what I'm being fed more often than any other region. I do generally try and keep it more global and include a bunch of different stories to both give this feeling that like progress is happening everywhere, which it is, but also to, yeah, hopefully resonate with a bunch of different people. Different platforms have different majority demographics. So like TikTok skews much younger than LinkedIn, of course. So if you're targeting a specific audience, it could make sense to hop on that platform that has the majority. It's leveled out a lot over the past couple of years, and I think, yeah, my audiences on my main two platforms, which are TikTok and Instagram, aren't that different. I could maybe I should include a screenshot of this, but they're pretty equal gender wise. They definitely skew younger, like 18 to 34 or whatever the bottom two segments are, is the majority of people. Um, but yeah, I think there's other things like including hashtags and pinning, or not pinning, like selecting the location on the post can help find that audience too. And then if I'm teaming up with an organization and trying to find a specific audience, I'll like call that out. Like I'll say the location that the story is in more towards the beginning of the video, and it will be in the captions and it will be in the description. And because of that, the algorithm learns the place that I'm talking about and is more likely to feed people that live there. Like the algorithm knows a lot. It's pretty smart, for better or for worse. So that's helpful as well. I think I answered most of the questions you jumbled in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I kind of threw a lot in there because we're trying to get through. So I'm gonna go kind of next. There were a couple questions asking about what I would consider kind of the framing or the emotional tone.
Mhm.
Um, I do want to say on that topic, like uh, I love how much behavioral science you integrate into your talk and you integrate it into your mission. And when you thought about like starting with countering the negativity bias and you looked at kind of social norms and engagement and how all that works. So I just want to kind of shout that out. And so this is kind of leaning into some of the more, there's a lot of really interesting academic research that suggests, how do we lean into fear? How do we lean into hope and positivity? And
Mhm.
Sabrina McCormick just put out a great piece that hope is one of the driving, for specifically climate change content, one of the driving emotions. So Reuven asked, like, we know about the negativity of bias, so should we harness it at all or just try and counter it? And then somebody else said, I'm really interested in engaging youth. Do you think starting with wonder and the role of wonder and awe, can we spark curiosity in this way and then focusing or over focusing on what people should do? So how do you think about, balancing those emotions and those frames?
Yeah, I think both of those would be great depending on, who you are and what you have to say. I personally focus on this positive lens because it's what I'm passionate about and believe in and need for my own mental health. It's really beneficial to spend a few hours looking just for good news. But definitely the wonder and awe plenty of successful climate content does lean into the negativity bias. I think you should do that responsibly and provide people with some, like, again, some kind of action to take at the end of it, not just being like, look at this horrible story. All right, bye. Like, I don't think that's beneficial for anybody, but if you're doing it in a smart and responsible way, I think that's useful. I think we need all the different angles and all the different interest groups and niches and intersectionality that touches climate. So I think whatever you know best is probably what you should lean into. And reiterating one earlier question that I didn't quite answer was like people that aren't super engaged in climate. I frame my content as here's good news, which is very general. And then if you watch the piece, it's almost always related to the climate and environment and natural world. But I think that I try and be deliberate with the language that I'm telling. And obviously, as we all know very well, with the current political climate, it's hard to talk about certain topics very explicitly. And I think thankfully with climate, there's many other benefits to most solutions. So sometimes it's best to lean into those. If I'm talking about rooftop solar, I can focus just on like how it's going to save you money and be more reliable and not even mention climate, and that can be successful. And I know that I do a decent job at reaching across the aisle, as they say, because of some comments that people are writing. And I think at the beginning I was saying, here's climate news and being very like on the nose with the types of stuff that I'm doing. And I've gotten more deliberate with that framing over time. So that can be a very useful tool as well.
Awesome. And that's great. You talked a little bit about the last thing I was going to try to get into was translating into behavior change and impact. And you kind of touched on that just now, which is great because I see Reuven popping back in wanting to say goodbye. I just want to thank you, and I want to invite everyone else to thank Jacob one more time. I will post his links. I will try and post that Sabrina's piece about hope. There's a great podcast with her as well. Yeah, one more time, you can reach Jacob. You could find him on Instagram, on TikTok, on a whole bunch of platforms. Jacob Simon Says. I highly recommend checking out the Hope Makers. What he didn't say is he's starting to move from just these stories to putting himself in stories. So Jacob is starting to like actually engage in volunteer projects and tell longer form stories about them. So really follow him, reach out to him, engage him. I think that partnerships with creators like Green Girl Leah, like Brown Queer Brown Vegan, Jacob, are an amazing opportunity for us in this space. So I'm going to turn it back to Reuven to close us out. And thank you so much, Jacob, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's great talking with y'all.
And I just also wanted to say thank you, Beth, and thank you, Jacob. This has been a really tremendous webinar and really uplifted myself, and I think a lot of the folks on the webinar. I don't know if you could see all the applause and hearts that were coming up constantly throughout. Just wanted to jump back in here to quickly remind folks that please register for the BECC conference where you'll hear this kind of content and a lot more before October 1st, so you save that $50. And if you are a speaker at BECC and you're out there in this audience, please register immediately so you don't lose your speaker discount. We're still waiting for a few speakers to register, so go over to the BECC conference website, check out the content, and register right away. Again, thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Beth, and we'll see you all in November. Well, actually, we'll see you in October for the next webinar and then in November for the conference in Sacramento. Take care.